Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Merry Christmas. Happy
Merry
New Year.
Christmas.
This is going to be the probably the last episode of the year. I don't know. Maybe we'll sneak one in next week, but I'm kind of doubting it. Monday is Christmas itself. We're definitely not recording on Monday next week. It snowed where I am, so
Is that
what?
unusual in the B of the C?
It's around Christmas. Sometimes it happens, but not that often. So I don't know if it'll actually stick all the way until Christmas.
Right,
But
right, sure.
but we got a snowfall, and I saw the Last Jedi. So there you go. It's been all right.
What were those last words?
I said I saw the Last Jedi.
Oh, The
Star
Last
Wars.
Jedi. Okay. I am seeing that on Christmas Day.
Cool.
We're gonna get that from Santa. I think it's a Santa gift.
Okay.
So I
That's
can't
good
say it
because
too loud.
then you'll have seen it. I'll have seen it. I'm not sure about Austin, but we have to do our annual get together and talk about Star Wars on his podcast, Austin's
Right,
podcast. So
right. Uh okay, so I promised that I was getting new couches, and I did. They
mhm.
are directly behind the camera, and they are amazing. They are almost exactly the same size as the seating that we had in here, but the seating we had in here was like an individual seat and then a love seat that reclined. These are
Okay.
it's a home theater thing where they set it up, where you can like pick the different pieces. So we picked two pieces on the end that are oversized individual chairs
hmm
that have the motorized reclining,
hmm
which I both love and think is absolutely hilarious whenever we use it. It's just it seems ridiculous to have, but it is very awesome. And
hmm
the reason this is the last reclining couches I had, you could put them up into the recline position, and that's where they wanted to stay. They could either be
Right.
down or up. And then if you wanted to go someplace in between, like fully reclined or anything else, it required like you to sit just right. And if you moved the wrong way, it would start to fall back into its normal position. This means that when you set it someplace, it is exactly where it is and it does not move,
Yeah, it's the fully variable,
is
which is cool.
what I wanted.
hmm
And the middle seat is a manual recline, which
Okay.
is fine because I didn't have an option, or I would have gotten it. But it's actually sticking pretty good too. It's doing its job pretty well. I expect over time it will loosen up and it will
Mm.
not be as good. But really like it, which means I did promise I would have the overhead Atmos speakers up and wired and everything, and I did.
Oh,
Everything is working. I have Atmos in here. I've experienced Atmos. I think Wonder Woman is an Atmos movie. At least it was saying Atmos on
uh-huh.
my thing when I was watching it. John Wick is also in Atmos. So I watched a little bit of that, though I didn't notice anything happened in Atmos there.
Really?
And
In John Wick? The club scene, the music is like coming from directly
no, no,
above
no,
him.
no, 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 no. I did not get that far into this
Okay,
movie.
well,
I
there
was
you
trying
go.
to watch it with a friend of mine who was drinking, and he was like, I'm going to fall asleep if we keep watching this movie. I'm like, dude, you are a terrible friend. Get out of my house. So there's also a Dolby Atmos demo thing
hmm
on Xbox 360. So I was watching,
Xbox One,
listening to all that. One,
not
sorry,
360.
Xbox
Yeah,
One, not 360. Yes. I'm sorry, I've got
that's okay.
stuff on the brain. So I did all of that, and I feel like it adds something.
hmm
I don't know if it's worth all the trouble we're going
Yeah.
through to get it,
Oh, I
but
know.
it it technically does something. It's very hard. It's very hard when you go from stereo to surround. It's like a paradigm shift.
hmm
When you go from no sub to sub, it's another paradigm shift. When you go from one sub to two subs, you're like, I I was not immediately impressed, but in the end, I really know I got my money's worth for doing this. And everything after that just seems like, well, surround back speakers, they're
hmm
there, they do a thing. Overhead speakers, they're there, they do a thing. It's very hard to get excited about, but it's there, and now I will have the ability to talk about it on the podcast.
That's
So
right. And the Focal
thank you.
birds, I mean, I guess you haven't listened to
Yes,
them just as a pair as though they were fronts or something, but
they are
good,
matching very
bad,
well.
matching.
Yeah,
There you go.
they're matching very well. They're highly configurable as far as how you
hmm
aim them. They're very easy to set up. I did point out some of the things I thought were a little bit weird about them, which is fine. But the one thing that was really weird, the speakers themselves have not been an issue. The receiver is like, okay, so you have an external amp, do you? What did you plug into them? The top middles or the fronts? I'm like, well, I did the front heights into them. And he's like, they're like, no, you didn't. You either did the top, middles, or the fronts. I'm like, but I already have it wired for the front heights. I want to keep it front height. No, you do not. You want to read the wire the top, middles, or the fronts. Which one is it? I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah. It's the whole 2 of these must be powered externally, and you don't have all the choices. You kind of only have those.
Very irritating, but I was smart enough when I started wiring these things that I went through and found some older wires of mine that had the compression style banana plugs, and I installed those at the end. So unplugging and plugging back in was no big deal. If I had gone through and I was going to do bare wire, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be back here with bare wire. I'll just do this real quick. It won't take that much time. So glad I did. Oh my goodness, such a big difference. But everything's up and running. I have not done a lot of listening in here. We watched Guardians of the Galaxy, which is not in Atmos, but I did notice a couple times in that movie as well where the surround up mixer was doing something. You know, you could hear that it had stuff that wouldn't normally sound like it was going around the room above your head was going around the room above your head. So it was quite good. It's quite good. So yeah. All right, we're gonna get into this podcast. We have a lot to talk about. So this is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. It's probably the best way that if you're not going to email us directly to get that in touch with us. YouTube.com/C/AVRant, which is probably the worst way to get in touch with us if you want to get your question answered. You contact us directly, Rob at AVRant.com. His Twitter's at First Reflect. I'm Tom at AVRant.com. My Twitter's at AVRant_Tom. And I broke my rule. I actually posted something to Twitter the other day. I was like, at the Patreon thing.
That's right.
Repealed, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but it got repealed or undone or never happened.
Or just, never happened. Yeah. Announced and then never deployed.
And I posted that on there. That was the only thing I've tweeted in a while. But so that, and then we have our producer Austin. He helps put together a question list. He's working on a tutorial video for large rooms with big subwoofers and oddly shaped rooms. So you'll be seeing that very soon, hopefully. And he has his Twitter's at Austin Pond, TEN. Austin Pond. He has those podcasts, the We Watch Movies podcasts about spinning icons on computers. You know, like you got the beach ball, and then you got the little that used to be an hourglass.
Yep.
And they go through all they have so far. This is a fairly new podcast. They've been going through all the options that have been across time for the spinning, and then their plan is to also obviously keep up with different devices that they have their different spinning things, because everything's got a spinning thing. But they're also going to suggest new ones. They have a weekly, it's a weekly podcast, but they have a monthly segment on the existential dread that is caused by such things and how to combat that, which is probably the best part of that podcast, to be honest with you.
Strangely enough, though, we'll be talking about Star Wars The Last Jedi on it in the not too distant future, sometime after Christmas.
So We Watch Movies podcast. Yeah, they're going to take a break from that to talk about The Last Jedi, because we're all Star Wars fans. So it's a strange podcast. It tends to be their most popular episode of the year, though. So oddly enough, there you go. So let's get into our listeners of the week. So first, we want to thank these listeners who have gone to www.avrant.com. They clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link to give us a PayPal donation. We want to thank Brian and James. We're actually thanking James twice because he hit us twice in the same week. So thank you, Brian, and thank you, James.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, and thanks, James. And I'll thank you again, James. That's awesome. I love to see those. That's a PayPal donation. You don't have to have a PayPal account. You can just use a credit card, or, of course, you can use a PayPal account if you have one. That's
right. And if you don't use PayPal account, then PayPal doesn't take any cut, which is nice for us. We also want to thank our Patreons. If you go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast, is that right?
Yep. AVRant podcast, all one word. Yeah.
You can join there, and Patreon basically is a service that allows you to sign up to give us money once a month. The minimum donation is $1 a month, and the upper limit is, for most people, $1 a month, but you can put as much as you want out there. So last week we had 39 patrons. This week we have 42, which was actually good because after the announcement of Patreon, we lost like a half a dozen or something like that. And then we bounced back up. So we want to thank our patrons, especially Clarence and Steven, who let us know that they are patrons and that they are supporting the podcast. All of these monies go into our coffers to help pay for, well, everything really, the hosting fees, if we need any equipment, if we need any not computer upgrades, we haven't gone that far yet, but computer programs that we might need, stuff like that to get this podcast made. So thank you, Clarence and Stephen, and all of our patrons over at Patreon.
Yeah, Clarence, Stephen, thanks for being patrons. Thank you so much to all of the people who've stuck with us on Patreon. That's really nice to see. So yeah, huge thanks there.
We also want to thank James in particular again. I think it's the same James who sent both Rob and I Christmas gifts. Did you get the same Christmas gift I got?
I don't know. What did you get?
I got an Amazon card.
I got an Amazon card as well. Mine was an Amazon Canada card, though, so James knows what's up.
Yeah, he does. I don't know. Okay, first of all, I don't know how he did that. I'm glad he did, but I don't know how he did it. But also, I have no idea how much is on that card because I don't want to put it into Amazon because we're still shopping for the kids. So I want to know how much it is so that I can spend it on movies, which is what I'm planning on spending it on. He told specifically, there's a note that says, "Don't spend it on the podcast. Spend it on something fun and frivolous." I am totally going to spend it on the podcast, but it's probably going to be Marvel movies. Let's be honest here. So that's probably going to have to buy with it.
That's all right. But thank you, James. Yeah. We really appreciate that. That's so nice. So Merry Christmas to you.
And if you can't support the podcast financially, a lot of people find ways to support the podcast. One way is to tell manufacturers that you have bought because of us. So we want to thank Clarence, who bought a Marantz SR6011 from Accessories for Less, and 2 PB12 NSD subs from SVS. He let them both know they found them because of us. Stephen wrote to Gary Akubian at SVS, who's the president, to let CEO, to let him know that he bought a pair of PB12 NSD subwoofers because of us. James got a Marantz SR7011 on sale Jason, sorry, for just under $1,000 for Accessories for Less, and he mentioned us. And Chris got a pair of SVS SB12 NSD subs and let them know we said to snag them before they sold out, which he did. So we want to thank, I gotta scroll back on the top, there's a lot of people, Clarence, Stephen, Jason, and Chris for talking us up to those manufacturers.
Yes, Chris, I very much like your very cute little cat who has found a perch atop 2 SB12 NSD boxes. That's a very cute picture. But yeah, thanks to Clarence, Stephen, and Jason as well for talking us up to those manufacturers and retailers.
I will let you know that those are the sealed box 12 NSD. So you can see that cat looks relatively, like not dwarfed by these things. That's 2 of them on top of each other, by the way. Right. And then there's the cat. So this is gives you an idea that the sealed box ones are actually quite compact. When you get to the ported box,
they big.
Remember that Super Pac-Man game where Pac-Man, when he would eat the little thing with pellet, would get huge? That's what a PB is compared to SB. So let's get into the news real quick. Patreon backed down and apologized for now. If you pledge a buck, you'll be charged $1. However, they still intend to change the payment system in the future, but they promise to consider more input before they announce any changes again. So, yeah, that was a terrible idea.
Yeah, that was handled very, very poorly. They said so in very frank and explicit language from their CEO or president, whoever it was who was speaking there. So, yeah, anyway, that's good in general in that, I mean, if you pledge $1, you should be charged $1. That's pretty simple. Let's keep that.
Right.
They're saying they need to do something with the fees because right now it's kind of all over the place and they don't really think creators are getting as much as they should and they're not making as much as they need to keep the whole thing going. So that's fair. If you need to make changes, you need to make changes, but has to be done better than how they were announcing it previously. But right now, if you're on Patreon, you pledge $1, you're charged $1. That's good. So don't leave just yet.
Yes, that's good. That's the most important thing. There should be no service charges on it. It's a donation. You should not. They shouldn't charge you. Yeah. By the way, when I bought tickets to the Last Jedi, I can't talk about it because of the kids. But when I bought the online tickets, I was charged like a $2.25 convenience fee.
Yeah, you guys do that, huh?
Per ticket.
Nah.
It took a $10 ticket. By the time everything was done, it turned it to like $15 plus tax. So stupid. Disney bought Fox Studios for $52.4 billion. They're not getting Fox Sports though, nor any of the News Corp arm of it. The deal still needs to go through regulation, so maybe it'll work, but we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, last week it was a rumor. This week they're like, "Yep, we bought them." I mean, as long as they're legally allowed to, they've bought them. So that's pretty big. That makes Disney the largest Hollywood studio.
Which is, I don't really care. Just make good movies. I mean, I don't care. Make good movies and don't have people like Harvey Weinstein running anything.
I don't know. Is this going to mean fewer, though? I mean, are we still going to get like 2 or 3 Marvel movies plus 1 or 2 X-Men movies? Like, I don't know. Maybe it'll be fewer.
It doesn't really feel like X-Men movies have been coming out nearly that often. And
I
feel
Deadpool
like
as an X-Men movie, then.
Well, I don't undoubtedly because it was an aberration. But
I think they're just going to roll X-Men and Fantastic Four right on into the MCU. That's what they're going to do. So,
well, that's fine too. But I don't think they're going to slow down the trickle of those movies because there's people who will go see X-Men just for X-Men. Some people who will go see, Marvel and the DC, fanboys and Marvel fanboys. They hate each other, so they're going to keep going to the movies that they're going to. Who can fight about such a thing? I mean, really?
Yeah,
really. Anyway, so Amazon Prime Video released around 100 titles in Samsung's HDR10 Plus dynamic metadata HDR format that makes them the only source for HDR10 Plus content, but it can only be played on 2017 Samsung TV. So if you have a Samsung TV from 2017...
which can't play Dolby Vision and likely never will as long as they keep going with this HDR10 Plus nonsense.
So, whatever.
I was kind of hoping that Amazon would never actually release any content, just leaving it kind of as a dead format. But here it is. So I guess we'll see how this plays out now.
Yeah, great. A couple comments. David. Okay, so David's, if you remember, his BenQ projector that had a spider web in it, he managed to eventually get rid of the spider web with compressed air, but it resulted in dust blobs on the inside of the lens. We told him to contact BenQ to get the recommendation for a repair shop so he could do a lens replacement. He says he reached out to half a dozen local repair shops, but none of them service projectors. So he asked BenQ for service directly, and they said they could give him an RMA and clean the light path of the projector, which is fantastic. He'd have to pay for the shipping, the labor fee, and the cleaning would be $85. It's a lot less than buying a whole new projector. So David was all set to go for it. A few moments later, the customer service rep wrote back, and they said they had spoken with their manager. And even though David's projector was a month past the warranty, they do the cleaning for free. On top of that, they sent him a free shipping label. So David is extremely happy and wants us to add BenQ to the list of brands who have offered excellent customer service. He'll be out without a projector for a couple of weeks, but that's a small price to pay when he's being cleaned for free. And you won't have to buy a whole new projector because of us, all because of a spider.
Yeah.
No, all because, well, I mean, yeah, you had to get the spider out of there, let's be honest. But yeah,
had to get the spider web out of there. Yeah, that's quite the tale, but very happy to hear that BenQ took care of him. That's great customer service. Love to hear that. I mean, $85 for the service isn't completely unreasonable or something. So he was like, "Yeah, I'll pay that. That's a lot better than $750 for a whole new projector."
Yeah,
but,
no doubt.
Yeah, they treated him right, so we like to hear that and pass that along.
You figure with shipping, going to be all in like $150.
Yeah, exactly.
Deal,
yeah.
So, and that's still, I mean, come on, that's better than
a whole new projector. Yeah.
Yeah. Steven. So Steven had the pair of KEF Cube 2 subwoofers in his 2,000 cubic foot theater. He asked if a pair of SB12 NSDs would be the right upgrade for him, or if he should spend more for the SB2000s, or a pair of ported SVS subs. We mentioned how a pair of PB12 NSDs for $500 each would have been the perfect choice, but SVS was sold out for the Black Friday sale. Luckily, a reseller still had PB12 NSDs available for $500 through their Amazon marketplace. So Steven snagged 2 of them. That's pretty awesome.
That's very nice. PB12 NSDs in that room will crush, and that's an excellent price. So
it is.
Yeah,
Ryan posted on Facebook. He won a pair of Focal Shape 65 monitors. He's astounded by their detail while remaining very linear and neutral. So now he understands why we recommend Focal so very often. So yeah, that's that.
They're nice looking speakers too.
So. Are those the one kind of the laid back top is like a
rounded
on the top.
Rounded on the top corner there, yeah. And that's got those like flax style woofers they're using like a
What is the deal with that? Oh yeah. What is the deal with that tweeter? Is it
It's an inverted dome.
Inverted.
Yeah,
weird.
So instead of a regular Audi dome, they use an inverted dome. That's their thing. That's Focal's thing.
All right, whatever. Let's get into the questions. Infinite Gary. Gary is finding HDR unpleasant sometimes. On his calibrated SDR displays, there can be something like bright sunlight or a bright headlight on the screen, and it doesn't make him squint or blink at all. But with HDR, those same sorts of images can be downright painful. What are our opinions? I do not have HDR. I have no opinion. I want to say this may be a case. I mean, he's got his stuff calibrated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, this should be properly calibrated. I'm gonna go with that. If that's the case, bias lighting may be your solution here. Just a little bit of bias light around the outside of your screen or whatever TV you're using, just to reduce that the difference in light output from the really dark to the really bright may help. It may be that you just don't like HDR too.
Yeah, honestly, you're not wrong at all. I mean, watching HDR on my parents' OLED, and that OLED doesn't even get to 1,000 nits. You know, it's topping out around 700, 750. For example, I especially noticed it in Ghost in the Shell. There's a scene where they're kind of in a club and some like strobing lights are going off, and it was like the strobing lights are going to probably make you blink anyway, but in HDR, those strobing lights were like, it was genuinely kind of blinding. Like, it was a little bit painful. And the thing was, it was supposed to be painful. The main character at that moment was going through a painful thing, and they used that to effect. Disney's talked about the same thing with some of their HDR. They're like, they actually use it to cause you physical pain in some moments intentionally, because that's part of the story. So it can absolutely make you squint. It can absolutely make you blink. That can be intentional. Even if you have bias lighting, like at my parents' place, we're not watching in pitch darkness.
Right.
So even with some bias lighting, that's one of the things with HDR. I mean, that was one of the fears, because the range from 0 to 100 nits of standard dynamic range, that fits below the threshold of where your pupil actually starts to have to move to, adjust to how much light is coming in. You can basically sit there, your pupils wide open, and they don't have to adjust. You're fine in standard dynamic range. High dynamic range, you go past that. Your pupils have to start to move, and that's what causes that blinking, that squinting, that momentary pain.
I question the veracity of wanting to do this. Yeah, I question why.
When it's really little highlights that don't light up a large portion of the screen, it does look more like real life. The Martian.
I'm not saying that, but I mean, I feel like this is a very new technology.
Yeah.
And we're going to go through some, like, when surround sound first came out, everything had to be, all around you. And now they've kind of just used it when they need it. This may be the same case with HDR. We may find that a couple of years from now, we're no longer having people complaining about, hey, stabbing eye pain, still a thing.
Yeah, like there's a scene in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes towards the end where if you watch the standard dynamic range version, it looks like it's evening, like it's overcast, evening turning into night. You see the HDR version, you're like, oh no, this is morning. It's very clearly the morning, the dawn at the end of the movie. It's very clearly that, because the way the lighting works in HDR, you're getting this detail of the shadows and the light coming from outside the building that they're in, and it all works much better in HDR without being blinding or anything. So when it's used really effectively like that, it really enhances the sense of environment and feels much more natural. When they do the blinding strobing light thing at you, it's downright painful. So it's how it's used.
So Gary's has had his Runco projector professionally calibrated. He also has JVC RS640 professionally calibrated, but they look really, really different from one another. Isn't calibration supposed to make all displays look close to the same? If he cranks the color and contrast settings of the Runco, it starts to look a bit more like the supposedly calibrated JVC. Why is there such a visible difference? Calibration is to make your display look as accurate as it can look.
Mm-hmm.
If one display has different capabilities than the other, then there's going to be some differences in how it looks. Though overall, I agree with you. They should be more similar than dissimilar. My question is, how long ago were these calibrations done? Were they done with the same people? Were they done at the same time? And have you been messing with the settings? Because let's be honest, Gary, you like to mess with settings.
It's also, is this SDR versus HDR, because that's gonna look
there's that question
very
too.
different.
Yeah, there's that question.
Also, the JVC does have the quirk where you can set it to its wide color mode and leave it there.
Right.
So even when it's supposed to be Rec 709 color, it's oversaturating the colors and expanding them to the P3 gamut. It has the so that might be the setting that would explain why if you turn up the color setting on the Runco, which would actually be oversaturating the colors, if that's the way your JVC looks, then it probably set and stuck in its wide color mode, even if it's not in HDR mode. So that could be one thing there. But the other part where things can look really, really different, even if the colors are all the same and accurate, even if your white point is the same and accurate, your grayscale is the same and accurate, and even if you have similar light output levels, if the contrast of one display is natively higher, it's gonna look significantly different to your eye. Because what our eye notices most is black versus white and edges around things, which is that contrast between light to dark. And the JVC is considerably higher in contrast. So it's always going to look, in a way, it might look more etched. It might look more like sharp, I don't know if sharp is the right, but almost as though like people are separate from the background, whereas everything kind of smooths a little bit on the Runco, which is lower in contrast, being DLP in that. So there can be a significantly different look just from the contrast.
Okay. I didn't listen to any of that. I just had to. My AC is. I feel very bad talking about this, but it's very hot in this house, and I can't open any windows. And this room gets extremely hot because of the lights and stuff like that. So I have to crank the AC down. And thank goodness for the Ecobee. That thing is saving my life. I mean, I almost want to buy it for gifts for everybody. That's how much I like this thing. It is really nice. It's too expensive for gifts, but there you go. So following on our discussion of what causes motion blur from 2 weeks ago, specifically on LCD TVs, can the type of backlight have an impact? Gary wants to know. CCFL versus edge LED versus full array LED, for example. Can that make a difference in motion blur? And the answer is no. I mean, it can make it worse or maybe not quite as bad, but motion blur is inherent to LCD. It's not going away. As we talked about, it's not a flash, it's a continuous image, and that's the problem.
But you can flash the backlight, which is something they do on some LEDs, or it's a setting where you can choose to flash the LED backlight or not. So sometimes you'll actually notice that when they're saying like, oh, this is a native 120 hertz panel, but we flash the backlight, so we call it effective 240 hertz or some nonsense like that. What they're doing is flashing the backlight. Now, that doesn't get rid of the sample and hold of the LCD itself, but there's a moment where the backlight turns off, so your eye gets kind of like a black, interstitial in there. That can help.
There's an article that I read like 10 years ago that explained exactly why even flashing the backlight's not going to work.
Yeah, it doesn't fully do it. It can help a little bit. They can also do black frame insertion, which is you have a 60 hertz signal, but you run the LCD panel itself at 120, and every other frame is a black frame. So that tries to and get rid of that sample and hold as well.
The same thing though is that what you're seeing on a plasma or these other formats, what you're seeing is a flash that's happening at that is happening at 600 hertz instead of 60 hertz. So you're not seeing a 60 hertz image up there 60 times a second, and then you're only going to see it for half of that time, because now we're going to have a black image in there for when we up at 120. It's still up there for too long. That's still the problem.
Yeah, and it's still nowhere close to 600 flashes a second.
That's right. So
it's 120.
It can help, but LCD is inherently has problems with motion blur. That's just the way it is.
The old CCFL backlights, I mean, being fluorescent, they were actually kind of strobing. They're supposedly strobing too fast for your eye to notice it, but I mean, all fluorescent lights are kind of flashing themselves. So there's all of it. It's a little bit of that, but the imager itself is this sample and hold thing. The pixel stays where it is for 1/60th of a second, or a 1/120th of a second.
Right. Let's move on. Travis just replaces REL T2 subwoofer with SVS PP12 NSD, and he is loving it. There are a few issues, though. He set the crossover on his old receiver to 80 hertz and has the sub plugged in using the low-level input. Okay. He doesn't seem to be hearing the plus 10 dB boost in movies from the LFE channel, though. So the question is, when running a 2.1 system, is the LFE content down mixed? No. I mean, the LFE stuff is LFE. That is an individual channel that is mixed the way it is.
That's
I
right.
don't understand why you think you're going to get 10 dB boost in movies, though.
Yeah.
That's that.
I think there's some misunderstanding going on here, Travis.
Yeah,
This
it's
might
not like. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this might be because he's heard the whole reference volume thing, where all of your
Right, right.
speaker channels max out at 105 decibels, while the LFE channel is allowed to max out at 115 decibels. So maybe he's thinking, oh, that LFE channel is supposed to be 10 decibels louder all the time, but that's not the case. It's not meant to be 10 decibels louder than all the speakers all the time. It's that it has an additional 10 decibels of headroom allowed within the signal for those moments when the people who make the content really want to throw the bass out there, and it has to get louder because we're not very good at hearing the deep
That's right.
bass.
And the thing here, if you want to increase that bass by 10 dB, there's two ways to do it. You can goose it up on your receiver, or you can buy the DTS track.
Right.
Yeah, the DTS track will have it tends to have a bass boost over the Dolby track, whatever, if you have that
That
option.
might be part of it
So
too. You know, he might have been used to the
yeah,
DTS where they were very often goosing the bass in the signal itself to try and make it sound more impressive. But yeah, if you've run, I don't know if he has an auto setup because he's saying it's a 2.1 system, so maybe he doesn't even have an auto setup
yeah,
routine in
could
whatever
need
he's
to
running.
calibrate it. He could be sitting in a null too, where those lower bass frequencies
Mm,
are not are being canceled out by themselves, in which
yeah.
case he's going to have a hard time hearing it as well.
But primarily, if you send like let's say just the your any AV receiver that you're using, even if it's only stereo, should have trim level settings
Sure.
that you're sending out. When that test tone plays, all of them are supposed to measure at 75 decibels C weighted, including the zero point 0.1 LFE subwoofer output. It's not supposed to measure at 85 decibels versus all the others. All of those trim level signals are supposed to measure at 75 dB. So if that's how it's been set up, maybe previously you had it goosed by 10 decibels and you're wondering why it's quieter now. If
It's
that's
true.
what you want, go ahead and goose it up, or just turn the volume up on the back of the sub. But they are all supposed to be even. It's just you have 10 decibels extra headroom in that 0.1 LFE channel if it's needed.
That's right. Ted, this is the guy who gave us our outro music.
Mm-hmm.
Ted says, when it comes to budgeting for a home theater, do we believe in buying the best speakers you can afford, or more or less regarding of the total budget? Regardless of the total budget. Well, let me say this again. When it comes to budgeting for a home theater, do we believe in buying the best speakers you can afford, more or less regardless of the total budget? So he's saying, it seems as though speaker quality for the dollar has improved a lot recently. So it's almost as though there's a ceiling in terms of how much you can spend on speakers before you no longer get any improvements. Do we agree with that? And if so, does that mean a larger percentage of the budget should be allocated to the display? There's so much to unpack with this question. So let's start with budget. As your budget increases, the amount you need to spend on speakers to get really good sound decreases percentage-wise. Okay. So if your budget is $1,000, in order to get good sound in your room, you're probably going to have to spend a greater percentage of your budget to get there. If your budget is $100,000, the percentage of your budget you'll need to spend on speakers to get really good sound in your room, depending on the size of the room, is generally lower. It's going to be much less than the percentage amount you'll spend on in a lower budget. Speaker quality has gotten quite a bit better, I believe, in the last 10 years. The last 10 years, there's been a number of really good speaker designers out there making fantastic designs, and it has caused the entire industry to raise its game. There were, for such a long time, people were just throwing things against the wall and like, this looks neat, so we're going to do this, or this has more drivers in it, therefore it's better. And we've gotten away from all that. We've gotten into really good measurements, really good design, understanding of how, sound waves interact with each other as they go through the air and around your room. We're getting new and better tweeter designs and woofer designs. there's much more thought and care put into these things. So yes, I agree. Speaker design has gotten much better in the last decade or so. There is I won't say that there's a ceiling to how hot, how much you can spend before you get no improvements, but there's definitely a point where the law of diminishing returns kicks into a very high degree. You're like, yeah, technically, this is technically better, but I'm not really hearing that. Then you have to take into account your room and everything else. So if you got $100,000 budget, but you've got a theater for 50 people, well, suddenly you're looking at a completely different class of speaker than what you're looking for in the home theater situation. You can't just go to SVS and say, give me a bunch of subs for my 50-seat theater. They're going to look at you like, you're kind of talking to the wrong guys. I mean, we make good subs, but I'm not sure that we can fill that theater.
Some of those 16 Ultras, I mean, you get multiples and stack them, you can get going.
You'd have to stack them. Yeah, you'd have to do a lot, but you could definitely spend your money better. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, but when you are going into $1,000 speaker build and say a bedroom setup, suddenly you can quite quickly spend $750, maybe $550 on speakers. That's over 50% of your budget. Just trying to get 5 speakers in a decent sub, even though it's a small sub, even though it's a small room to put space in. It just costs that much money to get something good. Yeah, go ahead. I could go on forever. I could wax poetic about this.
This whole approach of setting a budget with percentages has always bothered me. I've never liked that approach because have a budget. Okay, here's how much I can spend in total. All right, that's good. Set that. There's your cap, your ceiling. But then you have to go, okay, what is my starting point in terms of this room? Because if your room is terrible, you gotta take money from that budget and fix your room, because that's 50% of your system is your room. That doesn't mean you're gonna spend 50% of your budget on it. You might already have a really nice dedicated room that's fully carpeted. All you need is a couple of acoustic panels and some chairs, and that's all you had to do in there. Or you might have a terrible room that requires construction. You got to rerun the HVAC, you got to redo some electrical, then patch the walls, then acoustically treat it. Like, it could be tremendous. So this setting a percentage within your budget, I've never liked that approach. I don't like the articles that espouse here's how much you should allocate percentage of your budget. It's like, no, you got to look at the situation, get the room in order first, and then go, all right, now that the room is in order, how much money do I have left? Like, what's my seating distance? If my seating distance is really far, I need a big screen. And that means I'm going to have to steal money away from my speaker budget. Or I'm sitting within 8 or 9 feet. I don't need a gigantic screen. I can spend more on my speakers now. What's the total cubic footage of my room?
I don't have a couch. I have nothing. Are we just budgeting for speakers and acoustic stuff in here? No. You got to think about everything else that goes in that room.
Yeah. What's the total cubic footage of my room? That's going to drastically impact what subwoofers I need to choose in here. So I don't have any problem with spending $3,000 on subwoofers and $1,000 on all of your speakers. I don't have a problem with that, because in some situations, that's the right thing to do. It's not always the right thing to do. So I'm not going to write an article where I say spend, 30% of your budget on subs and 10% of your budget on speakers. No, because it's dependent on each individual situation. So yeah, case-by-case basis. That's all I can say. And that's why we answer questions the way we do on this podcast.
That's exactly right, because every question is unique. Every person's situation is unique, which we're going to find in the next question.
Yes.
It's really going to come up here. But as an example, if I were to go through and you were to come to me and say, hey, Tom, help me design, I want to get surround sound and stuff. I want that. What would be my first questions? Do you have a TV? Is it big enough? Do you have a room? Mm-hmm. What condition is it in? How big is it? How much do you care about sound? I mean, literally, that is a question. How much do you care about sound? How much do you care about the fidelity of the sound? Do you just want to hear it? Do you want the speakers to be invisible? Because if you want the speakers to be invisible, you don't care about sound. I am sorry. I have never once met a person who says, I want the sound to be pristine in here, but I don't want to see anything. Like, no. You
I've heard
don't.
of that. Those are tough things to get both, but I've heard
Yeah,
people say that.
those people really care about how invisible it is. They don't really care about how good it sounds because they don't have any idea. Because if they had any idea how speakers worked or how what good sound sounds like, they'd be like, I want the good sound. It would be awfully nice if it could be kind of incognito, if we could make it not be so obvious. But you know, I really want the good sound. They would say that. Same thing with the TV. How much do you care about a big screen? Hey, I've got a 50-inch TV. We're just going to use that. You're sitting 17 and a half feet away from there. You sure? Yeah, it looks good to us. Okay, can you even read the scroll across the bottom? No, Rob told us to use binoculars. All right, don't worry. Okay, you guys are fine. So, you can really, everything is tailored towards each individual person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why some people I'll be like, grab some cheap satellite speakers, get this nice sub, and a cheap receiver, and you're good to go, because they really care about bass. That's what they're worried about. We can worry about the rest of the speakers later. Some people are more worried about that 2-channel fidelity or just fidelity in general. Those people, I say, get 2 channels and a sub, and then we'll build out from there to your full surround, because you're going to care about having good speakers that you can live with. It's individual. It's an individual case. And we've got to go on because we're going to just talk about this forever. We're going to talk about this forever. So let's go to Greg. So Greg wrote us several months ago. He and his wife had bought a house with an existing theater. There was a bulkhead in the front right corner, so we suggested framing a false wall along with some other suggestions for projector and speaker positionings. And I guess there's going to be some images here.
Yeah, so this is the old image. This is what it looked like. You can see the bulkhead in the front right corner. And then, he drew up a diagram. So he's going to put in a false wall. There's going to be 2 rows of seats. There was already a short riser that existed in this theater, but had those plans in mind.
Yeah. So he redid the drop ceiling, moved the projector mount, bought a 110-inch silver ticket screen, and was all set to construct the false wall. This was all happening mere weeks before his wife was due to give birth to twins, so the clock was ticking. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine trying to do a project like this when my wife was about to pop, because believe me, that's a stressful situation for her, and she is not going to have much patience for you. So the clock was ticking, but it was nearing completion, and then squish. I don't know why I'm saying the word squish, but it is there.
That's the sound he heard while he was up front building his false wall at the front of the room. He heard a squish underfoot.
Underfoot. Oh, underfoot. Yeah. That's not good. So it turns out the bulkhead was concealing a water main inlet, and that the inlet was leaking. He quickly called the demolition company to remove everything that was wet. As a result, the entire front wall is down and exposed to concrete foundation. The entire floor, including the seat riser that was already there from the previous theater, is down to the concrete. But aside from that, his wife and twins are all happy and healthy. So that's the main thing. The main thing is you've now got a home theater, and we can start from scratch. Yay us. So his home insurance will cover most of the rebuild. So instead of finishing the theater room himself, he's now going to hire a contractor. Yay. Okay, those pipes gots to go, Haas. Let's start with this.
Well, that's a big move.
That might be a big thing.
Pipes,
so how would we instruct the contractor to finish that front wall now that everything is exposed? So you finish it exactly as before, including the bulkhead, and then putting in the framing for the false wall. Should he leave off all drywall entirely on that front wall and just have the framing and exposed insulation? Let me look at this wall. You're going to have a contractor come in here and do this thing. You got to think about what's going to happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
You got to think about that. You got to finish that front wall as if you weren't putting the theater in here. You have to. I know from the
agreed.
I know that it's tempting to say, hey, you can just leave it open. We fill it with insulation, build a false wall in front of it, throw the speakers back there. It's going to be perfect. And somebody's going to come in and be like, before we buy this house, you're going to fix that wall though, right? You might as well just do it now. Insurance companies can do it. Frame out the wall. And I mean, I would talk to my contractor, to be honest with you. You're going to have to build something over those pipes. That's just sort of a thing that's going to happen. There's already a bulkhead there. You could do the same thing as before. That's fine. This time, put some sort of door in it so that you can get inside if something goes wrong like this. You're going to want to find this out again the way that you did. So go ahead and finish it off however they say to do it. Keep it as as nice as possible, as flush as possible. You know, you don't want to use up too much room up there. We're not, you know, you just want it as if that wall, as if the false wall in the home theater was never going to be in that room. That's how that front wall should be finished.
Yeah, honestly, you wanna finish this room as a pretty traditional room. Now, one of the things I neglected to put in here, but he was like, what should the insulation situation be on that front wall regardless? If it's not already, I mean, this is a concrete foundation, so I'm assuming this is either basement or something going on,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I think it's basement. It looks like it. Yeah.
So since it's all open up anyway, one nice way to do it is it's sort of it's the really quite rigid insulation. It's usually only an inch and a half thick, 2 inches at most. Roxel has their own version of it as well, but it's really quite rigid, not quite styrofoam, but getting pretty close to styrofoam. That actually goes right against the concrete. And then you put your 2x4 framing in front of that. Then you put your regular R15 batt insulation in there, and then you finish that front wall with drywall. That's the way to finish a concrete foundation basement. That gets your thermal
Your contractor's
break.
going to know this.
Yeah, but some of them do try to skimp, right? They just strap directly to the concrete sometimes, which doesn't get you sufficient insulation. So, you know, insulate it properly, finish that front wall, drywall it for sure. I want to start from the floor up, though, because the whole floor is exposed. So I don't know what the situation was before, but he said it was, this is coming up later, so I'm kind of going to skip down a few questions, but he was saying it was kind of this raised foundation on top of there, which is pretty common. Sometimes, right, you have the just sort of 2x4 planking on the concrete floor. Oftentimes it's only pressure treated, which isn't really the greatest. You want a complete break between concrete and wood. Pressure treated is acceptable, it's minimum code, but you want a complete break between the concrete and any wood. So there's a really easy product. DMX makes it. There's other brands that make it as well, but it's essentially just a dimpled plastic. It comes in these big black, usually rolls. You just roll it over the concrete. You tuck tape all the seams. That is a complete 100% thermal break from the concrete floor. And then it's just regular old plywood or oriented strand board on top of that as a traditional subfloor. Goes right on top of that plastic. Tapcons go right through the plywood and the plastic into the concrete. You can silicone them if you really want to get everything watertight. But you finish the floor that way, and then you put your framing on top of that subfloor, because then you don't have any wood touching any concrete ever. Everything is completely separated. So if that's what the contractor was going to do, great. If not, if he was going to try and cut some corners, because maybe they were for the insurance, right? You can do that. You just say you want a full thermal break, no concrete touching any wood. That's how you finish this. And then it's just a regular room. All of your theater stuff you are going to do separately. Still going to do a false wall, still going to build a wood riser. Those are just things you're putting inside of a finished box. Let the contractor finish the box like a proper finished box should be.
So if he ends up with the false wall, what should he put back there between the wall and the screen? He'd love it for it to act as a base trap. Does that mean putting insulation mostly in the corners behind the false wall? Well, since you're going to have a false wall, right? So the false wall, for just so that we're all on the same page here, basically it's framing that's attached to the walls of your room with there's going to be some sort of space between this fake wall and the actual wall. Inside this framing, you will hang or mount your screen, and you also mount or behind it, you either mount to or put behind it your speakers that are going to be back there. And then the wall itself should be some sort of fabric. The fabric should be, and this answers the next question, some sort of acoustically transparent. So a lot of times we say speaker grill fabric, but it doesn't have to be speaker grill. You have to go look for speaker grill fabric. It can be anything. Go to whatever your fabric store is, grab some fabric, put it up to your face like a freak, because that's what you have to do if you want to be a real audio AV guy. You got to put up to your face and blow through it. If you blow through it and you feel resistance as you're blowing, it's not acoustically transparent. If you don't feel any resistance, it's acoustically transparent. That's all. That's the only thing. Now, you can guarantee it's acoustically transparent by ordering, the Gulf for the Main stuff, or something that says speaker grill cloth or something like that. But there are other options out there, that are just perfectly fine. Black would be traditional, but there's no reason why you can't go with a different color. I wouldn't go with a bright color, but you go with whatever color you want. But behind that, on that back wall, I would just put all of the insulation.
Yeah,
just
I mean, you're just going to be building stick framing. I mean, you could do 24-inch on center. You don't have to do 16-inch on center for your false wall because it's not holding up any weight other than your projection screen and possibly your speakers, I guess. But, you know, if you do 16-inch on center, if you do 24-inch on center, it doesn't really matter. But just fill all those bays with regular insulation. Doesn't have to be anything expensive at all. Just regular installation, fill all the bays of the false wall framing that you just made, and then you put your acoustically transparent fabric over that. That's it.
Yeah, and I mean if you want additional base trapping, fill up the corners, fill up the actual wall that's behind the false wall. Fill anything that doesn't have a speaker on it.
Yeah.
Knock yourself out.
Now you've created an entire baffle wall. If your speakers are flush with the front of the false wall, you have now created a baffle wall. So that's easy and cheap. It's really not much to fill all the bays with cheap insulation.
Yeah, it's going to be a couple $100 probably all in for all this insulation we're talking about. I mean, you could really go crazy and maybe spend like $500, but you would have to try. You know what I mean? You have to really try. So if the front wall is going to include framing for a false wall, he's thinking he'd like to build in cubby holes or shelves on either side and below his screen to hold his speakers. But what should the dimensions be, and how should he finish them so they look nice and are functional? They need to be behind the fabric.
Yeah.
Who cares what they look like if they're behind the fabric?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
That's right.
You won't see them.
I mean,
that's the whole idea.
At this point, you're literally just putting in some like plywood. You're just securing it in between your 16-inch or 24-inch on center framing, and there's a shelf. It's an ugly shelf, but it's a shelf awful. To hold a speaker, and it's behind your acoustically transparent grill cloth. So that's it. I mean, you're literally just putting in something horizontal to hold the speaker. 16-inch on center or 24-inch on center is going to be plenty wide enough for any speaker you'd ever consider. So width is no problem, and it's just a shelf, so there's no height. It's just you have to decide how high you put the shelf. But you know what? If you get it wrong, it's not that hard to take out a piece of plywood and move it lower or higher. That's it.
Plus, no one's going to see it anyway.
That's right.
It's behind you could do it as bad as I would do it. I would do it awful. So any reason to put the center speaker above the screen rather than below it? The only reason I would put the center speaker above the screen is if by putting it below, there is no direct line of sight between somebody in your theater. So if you have multiple rows of seats and it's underneath, and the people in the back row, it's not going to, they couldn't physically see it, then maybe put it above. Most of the times I would just err on below. And you do have a false wall, right? Yeah. So if you get an acoustically transparent screen.
You already bought the screen though.
You already bought the screen. But if you could have put a shelf smack dab in the middle of that thing.
True.
And then there's your center channel. So there you go. So the old riser was only 4.5 inches high. I said wide, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. Which seemed to be too low to Greg. He'll have to explain. Yeah, have to explain what he wants to his contractor. So how high should it be? And what about all the stuff we mentioned previous about making the riser rigid and being able to still let air pass through it? How should this thing be rebuilt? Yes, it's 6 inches like standard. Isn't 6 inches standard for a riser?
I mean, usually a riser is between 10 and 15.
A step is 6 inches, right?
A step is maximum. A step is 7 3/4 inches. That's code. You can't have a step higher than 7 3/4 inches. So that would be one step. But very often, what you'll do is have like a little step, and then the riser is there. Because that gets everybody in the second row, that gets their head well above the heads of the people in the front row. There's no obstructed view to the bottom of the screen. So normally you're looking at, 10 to 15 inches all total.
I'm a little confused why you had a 4.5 inch riser. That seems...
Yeah. That's not much. Kind of useless.
I'm trying to think. Maybe it's like a 2x4 with plywood on the top. That's a... Right? Is that a plywood at the top and plywood on the bottom, maybe, or something like that?
Could be.
That's how they got to 4.5 inches.
Yeah.
That seems like how they might have done it. So one step and then up, you could do that.
Yep.
And I mean, you could just listen to what we said about how to build the riser before and say, here is this part of AV Rant. Go listen to it. This is what I want.
Yeah, I mean, if you do the subfloor that I just described, you're going to have plywood or OSB that is now secured to your concrete floor. I like this riser is not moving and this riser is not resonating. So it's very simple. If you have a plywood subfloor, you now just put in your you can just get some like 2x6s, right? You can have two of those. The height of two 2x6s would be a great height. One of those can be your first step. The second one is the total height of the riser. But you just have them put in vertically, just like you would for the joists of any typical floor. And then in the bays that are now created between your plywood subfloor and these vertical standing 2x6s, you just line those bays with plastic and you fill them about halfway up with sand. The proper sand that isn't going to wick up too much moisture or grow mold or any of that crazy stuff. But you just kind of fill it with sand, and now you have a dead platform. Now, there's still going to be some airspace in there. So that airspace you fill with the cheapest, the super white, terrible stuff that they throw in the above your garage, the cheapest insulation. You fill the rest of the airspace in there. And then you create some holes so that the air can actually get into that airspace. So now you've just created an inert platform with no resonance because of the sand, but there's this airspace filled with insulation with holes to get to that insulation, which means it's a gigantic bass trap. You're not going to need like hardly anything in the rest of this room. Your front wall is going to be dead and your riser is going to be a giant bass trap. You're not going to need much more acoustic insulation in this room.
Yeah. First reflection points and you're going to be done.
Yeah.
So he'll be using an HSU STF2 subwoofer up front with hopefully another subwoofer at the back of the room. Should he include a spot in the false wall up front to build in the subwoofer? That would get him a bit of floor space back, which would be nice in his cozy room. Yeah, dude, you should throw it behind the acoustically transparent wall.
That might have to bring the false wall too far forward, though. Because subs, HSU STF2, it's not huge, but it's not super shallow.
Yeah, but you can turn it to the side, right? Or something like that.
You can turn it to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can fit it behind the false wall, then you don't need to do anything special. Acoustically transparent fabric, and the subwoofer's back there. If not, I mean, you could just wrap the fabric around one bay section and kind of leave that bay open to recess the sub into that section of one bay of the.
That would look weird.
It would look a bit weird.
Yeah. Anyways,
turn it sideways, get it behind the false wall. There.
The old construction had a raised subfloor on top of the concrete foundation. Oh, we already talked about this.
Yeah, a little bit.
So the door height is already elevated a bit. It was actually a small step up from the floor outside the theater to inside the theater. So should the new construction match the old raised floor height and door height, or should it be redesigned so that it's the same height as the floor outside the theater? This is a question that is really for your contractor, because once you put the rest of the stuff in, they're going to have to finish this in a way that makes sense.
Yeah,
and that's going to be up to them. I'll tell you, in my home theater, we put in the new door, we put in the new wall, we did all the stuff, and the door was too big. So my guy just cut off the bottom of the door and then redid the stuff, and they're going to fix this. This is going to be something that once you tell them how you want your floor in your home theater,
right,
everything else they will fix.
Yeah, his question was, since the door is already where it is, should that floor be raised up as much as it was before? In my opinion, I don't like that. You shouldn't have this weird level difference between your floors.
I don't think so either.
I mean, a small difference is always going to happen because different finishes, right? One's carpet, one's tile, one's hardwood, whatever. You're going to have small differences. So you get those little spanners that go in between your two different type of floor things to, you have a little bump that you go over. But it shouldn't be much more than that. It shouldn't be a full step like that. So if you do the subfloor that I recommended, it won't be anywhere near as high as what we're seeing in this image, which means you'll probably need to hang a new door. But that's what I would say.
Thick carpet pad and a dark carpet. Any reason you should consider something else for the floor finish?
Sounds good to me.
Nope. Yeah, good. Yep. The theater doesn't seem to have an HVAC register. Air just seems to circulate via the gap under the door. Should he have an HVAC outlet installed during this construction? Anything to consider before doing that?
That's potentially a lot of work. Potentially.
Yeah. Potentially it could be. You're going to have to talk to your contractor about that. Yeah. If you could, it would be super duper nice. As somebody who's got 2 vents in here and is constantly being hot, and have people come over in the summer like, your theater gets too hot during the summer. I'm like, dude, the rest of the house is a meat locker. There's 10 people in a 17 or a 20 by a 13-foot room. Yeah, it gets hot in here,
I mean,
So
the key really and what's happening going wrong in Tom's theater actually is air circulation.
yeah,
It's
it's only
cubic
one place for
feet
it to
per
go.
yeah, cubic feet per minute, right? That's you've got to be circulating the air. So it's okay for your air return to just be the gap under the door, but that shouldn't be your air supply ever. And
Yeah.
then beyond that, very often in the theater situation, only having the gap under the door as your air return is not sufficient. So if you're going to do this, you have this drop ceiling. That could be your saving grace. The question is whether or not your furnace and your HVAC system is up to the task of handling an additional room that it might not have been specified to handle. It might be, you might be lucky enough that you have a furnace and an HVAC that's over-spec'd for the rest of your house and can handle this additional room. But if it can't, you're going to have to get a new furnace and a new HVAC unit to handle the number of cubic feet.
That would be a nightmare.
That would be a big deal. That would be a big expense.
Yeah, that would be a big expense. And then
probably not covered by the insurance because it's not restoring it to original. That's an upgrade.
yeah, you don't know how this is going to, how close you are to the stuff too, how if there's an easy way to hook this thing in. I mean, it could be the guy's like, oh yeah, dude, it's right there. We'll just pop one over. Oh, look at your unit. Your unit's huge. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Boom. Could be.
I mean, if that's the case, absolutely get a supply and a return. You can use you can use the front wall because you'll have the space. I mean, you could make the whole thing as far forward as the old bulkhead used to be. Now you got plenty of space in that front wall, or you can use the drop ceiling you installed. That could be a saving thing. But yeah, it's gonna depend on the capacity of your furnace and your HVAC unit.
Yeah. Weldon. Oh, wait. He said anything else you should consider before hiring a contractor to fix this mess. Yeah, dude. Wiring. Dude, you got this whole room gutted. Yeah, make sure you get your wiring all, where you want your speakers to go and everything. I mean, you might as well. You got everything.
Maybe have them throw a couple of 20 amp circuits in there. Like it'd be one additional thing in your electrical box that would have 20 amp circuits on there. Maybe have that thrown in there. That's nice for your equipment.
Yeah. Weldon. I could have swore I just heard somebody try to come in this room. I will go start throwing presents away. I just wrapped all the kids' Christmas presents right before this podcast. I was on fire. My wife's like, we have been married for 16 years, and I had no idea you could write presents. I'm like, I know, because I don't want to do it, but I felt like doing it this year. She's like, you're really good at this. I'm like, I know. I'll see you again in 15 years. Weldon. Weldon's great room is entirely open to both floors of his house, so don't even worry about the cubic feet. It is infinity cubic feet, and he knows it isn't a realistic goal to aim at pressurizing it with base. He's been using a Velodyne DPS 12. It's 12-inch ported, 400 watts dynamic, 20 hits down to about 25 hertz subwoofer, and he has not been displeased with the volume level of the bass that it produces. But what would he expect from, say, an SVS PC 2000? And then what would a PC 4000 offer over that? If none of these subs are going to pressurize the space, what is he actually getting by spending more for higher output models? Lower bass primarily is what you'd be getting, and possibly
more output, but it's still not going to be enough to pressurize like a whole house.
So if the bass you're hearing you are liking because of your proximity to the subwoofer in the first place, these can get louder. Therefore, you could theoretically like it more. They could also play lower, so theoretically you could like it more. All of this could theoretically make things worse if you've only got one subwoofer and it's suddenly hitting frequencies that are exciting things in your room that weren't being excited before because your subwoofer rolled off at 25 hertz. So it's sort of a catch-22 here. Would it be worth it? Well, SVS has free return shipping both ways. So, yeah, you might as well try it out.
I mean, without question, you can get a subwoofer that exceeds the capabilities of your current Velodyne.
That is true.
No question about that. That one isn't getting all the way down to 20 hertz. It really doesn't have the headroom to handle your space, like even close. But you're saying like the volume isn't your main consideration, but you can definitely get something that outperforms your current Velodyne. That's no question. The real question is between the 2000 and the 4000. Yeah, the 4000 plays even lower, although the 2000 already gets below 20 hertz, which is genuinely subsonic. You cannot hear it. So the 4000 playing even lower, that's not the difference. The 4000 plays 7-8 decibels louder. So what'll happen is, like McMansion Chris, great example, right? He had the budget to get two PC 12 pluses. He didn't have the budget to get two PC 13 ultras, and he was dealing with a space of 10,000 cubic feet. So he got the two PC 12 pluses, and he's like, I could have used a little bit more output. It didn't quite fully fill the 10,000 cubic feet to his full liking. Now, it wasn't that they didn't play low enough. They played low enough. It wasn't that they started making horrible noises, because the SVS subs are really well protected. It's going to be the same situation. You can turn the PC 2000 all the way up as high as it goes, and it'll just gracefully bow out once it reaches its output limit. It's going to be like, I'm sorry, I just can't play any louder. Whereas the PC 4000 would keep going for another 7 or 8 decibels and go, yeah, I can get you that much louder, and then it will gracefully bow out. Now, if you don't need that extra 7 or 8 decibels, then the 2000 got you to where you want to be. Neither of these is going to fully pressurize an entire house. So it's really just a matter of, can the 2000 get loud enough for you? If it can, the 4000 isn't really getting you any benefit for all that extra money. It's if you need it even louder.
Bobby. In Bobby's 12 by 12 theater, he built a shelf / box up high on his back wall to hold his projector. Then beside that projector box, he built shelves also up high, extending to each side wall to hold his gear. The shelves are 16 inches deep, and the bottoms of the shelves are 6 feet 8 inches off the ground. That's not the code. Anyways, since his seats are only 1 foot off the back wall, he had intended to install his overhead Atmos speakers more or less directly overhead, but now the shelves are there. He was thinking he could cut round holes in the bottom of the shelves and basically mount his Atmos speakers firing down through the bottom of the shelves, but would they be too low? Would that be a problem?
It's going to be pretty close to the top of your head. Although there's plenty of people with a lowered ceiling in a basement, and they're still putting in-ceiling speakers up there.
I'm kind of okay with this. I got to be honest with you. I'm kind of okay with this. I'm kind of feeling like this is a good idea. You got it up there. I mean, yeah, they're going to be kind of close, but you know what? Who cares? Who cares? Look for speakers that have good off-axis response, because your 30-degree mark is going to be, or 15-degree mark is going to be awfully close to the center seat there. So you're going to want to make sure that you've got some good off-axis playing speakers, and I think this is fine.
I mean, particularly if one of your goals was to notice the top middle speakers.
Oh yeah,
it's only going to help you in that case. So it's really a question, because some people are like, I don't want to be distracted by them. I want it to just be ambiance. In which case, maybe that would be a problem. But if your goal was to notice them, then this is only going to help you. So maybe that helps answer that question for you. This isn't a thing where I would say you can't do this. Just realize, you're going to have very wide dispersion speakers, and the trim levels and the distances are going to be set by your AV receiver anyway. So,
yeah. So he's installing bass shakers in his seats. He's read that chairs should be isolated from the floor, though. Mm-hmm. What can he buy to do this? Mouse pads, lots of mouse pads.
Yeah, kind of just need something squishy. Butt Kicker has you totally covered on this, though. Even if you're not going to buy Butt Kicker brand tactile transducers, they just sell rubber isolation feet. They sell them in packs of 4. I think it's $12 for a pack of 4. And they just go into the bottom of whatever is holding up your chairs, and they're little rubber squishy things that isolate your chair.
That's just to stop them from vibrating on the floor and making noise. I mean, that's all.
I mean, they're working like springs, because the chair is now physically moving with the tactile transducer. You need something springy under your seat. So just get those. Butt Kicker.
All right, Tyson. Tyson was a bit disappointed to hear us so quickly recommend trying to set up his theater in a spare bedroom rather than his open concept great room. He decided to try out the HSU horn-loaded speakers along with the HSU VTF-15H subwoofer for that great room. He also found a pair of Klipsch in-wall speakers with the exact same dimensions as the speakers that got painted over, so things are shaping up for that room.
Remember those painted over speakers? Those were some dead speakers.
Those speakers were no more. These were deceased. Miracle Max couldn't bring these back.
You found some Klipsch's that are the exact same dimensions, so that's good. That'll work.
So after some emails with Rob, he started focusing on the great room's acoustics. He started showing his wife different acoustic panel options and found pictures of treated rooms, trying to convince her. Then he started talking about trying the comforter trick, where you just try to have a conversation sitting across the room from one another, first with the bare room and then with comforters held up behind each of you, which should make things a lot easier to understand. Should make it a lot easier to understand each other's voices. They didn't actually get to the point of holding up the comforters. She gave up. This confuses me. What am I missing here? I don't understand. I've read this 3 times. I still don't understand it. What do you mean she gave up? She gave up what?
Well, she gave up trying to tell him that the only place he could have a theater in this house is this open great room.
Okay. She decided that he could use the room that was going to be her arts and crafts room as a dedicated theater instead. He thanks Rob's craziness for pushing her over the edge.
So we were saying try and use a spare bedroom. He was like, I don't actually have a spare bedroom. My wife's kind of saying, look, the TV's going in here. I've got this entertainment cabinet that's already built in that we're bemoaning because we aren't a big fan of these built-in pre-made entertainment cabinets. But he's like, I've got this thing. That's where she wants the theater to be. But since we so adamantly and quickly said it'd be a lot better if you had a smaller enclosed room. So he's like, okay, how can I convince her? And I was like, well, just show her that, if it's going to be in this big room, you're going to need all these acoustic treatments to make it sound really good. Just try to have a conversation. It'll be echoey and hard. You'll be raising your voices before you know it. There's this trick. You hold up comforters behind you. That shows you that having that absorption in there really helps. She's like, forget it. Just use the arts and crafts room. I give up. So I apologize to Tyson's wife, but congratulations, Tyson.
Yeah, Tyson, you gotta realize the repercussions of your actions here, sir, and Rob's interference. This might come back like 10 years from now as a huge point of contention.
He's saying when the kids finally move out, which is only a few years away, he was saying, then they'll have the spare bedroom. She can have her arts and crafts room back. So instead of him waiting the few years for the theater, she's going to wait the few years for the arts and crafts room.
I feel like that's fair, but I'm maybe biased slightly. So now we have a room that's 11 by 16. The ceiling is high. It's a tray ceiling, 12 feet around the perimeter and 13 feet high in the middle. Will that tall ceiling height be any sort of problem? What does the tall height do to the acoustics?
It helps.
The angle makes it so that the modeling that we all know and love doesn't necessarily work exactly as we hope.
He's saying tray ceiling, not vaulted. So I don't think it's a peak. I think it's a
it's got
like
a thing in the thing.
Like the soffit all the way around type of thing.
Oh yeah, well then that's fine.
Oh yeah,
I was thinking vaulted. I don't know why I had that.
No, he said tray ceiling, so it's this perimeter thing. So it's not vaulted. So yeah, extra height in a room is a good thing. One of the issues with the traditional 8-foot ceiling height is that creates a bass mode in the vertical direction at a fairly high frequency. So the taller you can make your room, it's actually a benefit, especially when the other dimensions are not that large. That makes a larger volume of air. It lowers the frequencies at which you have bass modes, which is generally a good thing. So this is only a help. That's a good. If you're worried about the ceiling height, it's actually a plus.
Scott wears glasses, and for work, he sits and looks at a computer screen all day. There are lenses available that filter some of the blue light, and they're recommended for people who spend a lot of time looking at computer and phone screens. They look like they have a slightly yellow tint to them. So how would wearing such lenses affect the colors on this TV? Adversely be how it would affect them? It's
filtering blue light no matter what you're looking at. So
yeah, so I mean, you're looking at your screen and the sky is supposed to be blue, and this is going to make it not quite as blue. Mm-hmm. And their eyes are supposed to be blue and not quite blue. And in fact, every shade of blue that you could possibly see, and everything that's coming through is going to go through these lenses, which means if your TV is putting out accurate color, you are not seeing accurate color.
I suppose you could recalibrate to the glasses, which actually isn't that hard. I mean, all you have to do is set the color temperature to a cooler color temperature like your computer screen, which means your TV is now too blue for everyone who isn't wearing your lenses. Although a lot of people don't even notice that. People set it to vivid mode anyway, don't they? Which is way too cold and way too blue. So you could, and then you're seeing something close to accurate color while everyone else is seeing an image that's too blue.
Seems awfully selfish, but yeah, I guess you could do that.
I mean, given how little other people care and set it to the too cool color temperature anyway, this isn't insurmountable.
Just take the glasses off.
Have 2 pairs of glasses, one that has these and one that doesn't. Or the
You get your work
snap-ons,
glasses and your everything else glasses.
snap-on
Well, you
filters.
running around with yellow lenses, you're gonna look like John Goodman in
Or call your IT department and have them calibrate your computer screens to not be so darn blue. I mean,
what's
that
the name of
can
that
be
movie? John
done.
Goodman. The movie with the dude, what's it called?
Huh?
Come on. The dude.
The dude.
The dude abides. You
Oh,
know,
Big
you know what I'm talking
Lebowski.
about. Big Lebowski.
I mean, you
John
literally meant
Goodman's
the
wearing the
dude.
yellow glasses the whole time. Yeah, the dude. The dude, the capital D, dude.
Gotcha.
Anyways. Yeah, don't be that guy. Yannick. Yannick asks, why are there so many more movies available in 4K HDR format from the iTunes USA versus the iTunes Canada store? Apple hates you?
No,
That's
Apple
what we're
doesn't
going.
hate you.
It's the
We have a
yeah.
government body in Canada that requires a certain percentage of all content on any service to have originated in Canada, and as a result, we have completely separate content libraries. It's as if they're two completely separate services. So just because they're both called iTunes, you really can't compare them. It's a limitation. Yeah.
It's funny. I the first time I heard about that was on Cue the Music, which is a PBS, PBR, whatever they are, radio show, and they were talking about that
Mhm.
rule and how how it can be somewhat problematic when you're trying to get content. That content people want from other countries can't come in because there's not enough Canadian content to
Mhm.
balance it out, which is kind of messed up. But I do appreciate that they were encouraging Canadian content, but doesn't it count that everything is filmed in Vancouver these days?
I
Doesn't
know,
that count?
right? That should make it easy. But if it's not a Canadian production,
Can't we
unfortunately,
just get like a token Canadian on like every Marvel movie thing? That's whatever. By the way, okay, Inhumans is kind of terrible, but if you've seen Amazon Prime's Runaways,
uh-huh.
that's really bad. I got 4 episodes into
Oh,
that thing before I just gave right up.
I
First of
only
all,
saw the first episode, so I'm not
no
caught up
one
yet.
runs away. Okay, they live in like these ultra
Yeah, they're
posh
all very
houses
rich. Yeah.
in Beverly Hills, and I'm supposed to believe they're going to run away. Dude, the girl was taking an Uber to a party that no one knew she was going. What was she paying the Uber guy with? Her own credit card that her parents don't know about? I mean, come on. It's
Also seems to indicate that being a bad person and a criminal pays pretty well. They're all
apparently.
very rich.
I'm telling you, it does seem like all these, weird cult things that happen on TVs and movies, those people all got the bucks. So apparently selling your soul to the devil actually pays off. Merry Christmas. All right. So Yannick says, we've talked quite a bit about different screen sizes and aspect ratios recently. There's been the debate, in quotes, that was me mostly trying to understand what Rob was saying, about having a smaller 16:9 image that expands to a larger 2.35:1 image that keeps the same height, and then potentially having an even larger 16:9 image for IMAX. But Yannick wants to ask about a different option, which is to have a constant image area instead of a constant image height. In this case, there are restrictions to how tall and wide his screen can be. A 106-inch 16:9 screen is as tall as he can go. If we were to show 2.35:1 content with black bars at the top and bottom, he would only have a 100-inch image. But if you were to keep the same height, the 2.35:1 screen would need to be 132 inches, and that ends up being too wide to fit his space. So his solution was to install a 115-inch 2.35:1 screen and then have a 106-inch 16:9 screen that comes down in front of it. All the 16:9 content ends up being a bit taller than his 2.35:1 content, which is nice for those IMAX features and feels just fine for HD TV 2 since it isn't as wide as his 2.35:1 screen. So, yeah, this is kind of a little confusing. So, Rob's going to show you an image here, and you're going to kind of see the screen coming down. So he can get a 2.35:1 screen into his room that is slightly larger than his 16:9 screen.
Slightly
And
wider. Yeah.
wider, yes, wider.
But not quite
So if he
as
were
tall.
if he were to use the 16:9, he would have black bars at the top and bottom.
Mhm.
Now he can roll up his 16:9 and he gets this bigger 2.35:1, at least wider
That's right.
2.35:1, because he's able to fit this in here. But yeah, I mean, this is still sort of what I said, isn't it? Is it not sort of
Well,
what
I
I
mean,
said?
you've most of the time you've been saying just get a 16 by 9 screen and put everything on that 16 by 9 screen and make it as large on that 16 by 9 screen as the shape of the content allows. That's sort of been your take on it
Yeah,
for the
that's
most part.
yeah, and this is he's sort of kind of saying I can't get the biggest screen that I want so that my image height stays the same. So I got something slightly smaller, which is fine. I mean, it's fine. It's
Yeah.
just fine. It's still kind of what Rob's saying, except there isn't the third screen past it, which is the IMAX screen for the 5 seconds of
Yeah, because he's like, in his case, he has two screen sizes
dark.
instead of three screen sizes. And 16 by
Yeah,
9 is always taller than his 2.35 to 1, but it's not as wide. So when it goes to CinemaScope, he still gets the sense that what he's watching is
right.
bigger than his HD TV because it's wider. And then when he is watching IMAX, it's taller than the 2.35 to 1, but not as wide. And then for regular HD TV, it's the same size as the IMAX content, so he's not getting any difference between those two things. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with this. I mean, the only caveat to it is for those limited number of titles where it switches between 2.35 to 1 and 16 by 9, he'd have to use the 16 by 9 screen, which
That's
means
true.
for the portions of the movie that are in 2.35 to 1, it's now the smaller 100-inch size within his a 106-inch 16 by 9 screen, or for those things where the subtitles are hard encoded and they're in the black bars, or it's Ghostbusters and things are actually coming out into the black bars. So, but those are the limited situations, right? So I don't think this changes any of our advice. It ultimately comes down to, do you care about those limited number of times when things switch between 2.35 to 1 and essentially IMAX, or things go into the black bars? Do you care about those or not? Because if you don't care about them, then you could have one screen. It could just be a 2.35 to 1, or it could just be a 16 by 9. Or you could do this where you have two, one that's 16 by 9 and one that's 2.35 to 1. The only time you need the three screen sizes is when you care about the things that switch or go into the black bars.
That's right.
So that really answers the question. Do you care about those limited situations?
As a final tip, he recommends the site displaywars.com, where you can select two aspect ratios and put in two diagonal sizes, and it'll show you an overlay and gives you a table of different values so that you can quickly compare the two shapes and sizes to one another. I cannot believe there's a website for this, but I
Yeah,
guess
yeah, those are the images I've been showing, so that's where he made them. I didn't know about that site. I like that. That could be handy sometimes.
Thank you very much.
Displaywars.com. Yeah.
Robert's mother-in-law is moving in, so he won't be able to crank up his dual SVS PC 13 Ultras as much anymore. So he's looking into butt kickers to make up the difference in tactile sensation. I have to say I'm a little confused by this. I'm going to assume that his mother-in-law is going to be living in a theater, and that's why, whatever room, because that's what happened to me when my brother moved in. My parents moved in. They lived with us for a while. My brother was staying in the home theater, therefore we weren't able to come in here.
Well, I mean, installing butt kickers means he's still using the theater. This sounds like it's a volume limitation thing. That's what it sounds like.
Concerns me, because what is your mother-in-law? What, did she go to bed real early or something like that? I don't understand. But anyways, but he says not as much. I feel like, well, maybe she's moving in like forever, and she's, healthy as a horse, in which case he feels like he has whatever. You're doing it. It's happening.
Right.
So he's considering the butt kicker LFE and mini LFE models, which would be best use on a love seat.
The mini.
I feel like the mini, right? I mean,
yes.
butt kicker, that's the big one that goes on like 3 or 4 seats, right?
The big one is meant for platforms or maybe an entire sectional couch. The mini is meant for individual seats. Now, yeah, you could argue that a love seat, maybe you'll need 2 of them. I really don't think you will. But the mini is the right choice here, regardless.
You get the rubber feet, apparently.
You get the rubber feet, put it on the bottom of the love seat, install the mini.
So he knows he'll need an app, and he has a Dayton APA 100 just lying around that he could use, but he's not sure if it's up to a task. The butt kickers are rated at 4 ohms, and the Dayton is rated 75 watts into 4 ohms, but he's not sure if the specs, if those specs are in bridge mode or not. Would the Dayton work, and if so, what is the safest way to hook it up? Well, butt kickers' own amplifiers only put out like 45 watts into.
Those are the Aura bass shakers. The actual butt kicker amplifier is like 400 watts minimum into 8 ohms.
Is it really? Because I looked, I said butt
There
kicker
are
and
the
amplifier, and it was a standalone amp, and it was like 45 watts
there
into
are the mini.
4 ohms.
I guess there are the mini ones that come in the kits. Because
No, this was by itself on this
again,
website.
the mini LFE, the butt kicker mini LFE only needs 50 watts into 4 ohms. That's minimum. They're like it can take up to 250 watts into 4 ohms, but 50 watts into 4 ohms minimum. Whereas the full size butt kicker LFE wants 400 watts into 4 ohms. That's
really?
Yeah.
Well, that
So
seems like it's not gonna be enough. Because
the mini LFE will be fine.
Let's
Yeah.
see
So
here.
if that Dayton can deliver 75 watts into 4 ohms, now the bridged mode that gets you, I think it's 160 watts, but it's only rated into 8 ohms. The bridged mode is not rated for 4 ohms, and you shouldn't really use it with a 4 ohm load. It's not really designed for that. Honestly, you just take one of the channels. It's going to deliver 75 watts into 4 ohms. You connect it directly to the butt kicker mini LFE, and that's it. You're done. That's all you need. You feed that one channel, you power that one butt kicker mini LFE with your 75 watts coming out of that Dayton. You don't have to do anything else.
All right. This says designed to power one mini concert or two mini LFEs, include wired remote. The BK130C amplifier is included with the butt kicker Gamer 2. Specifications: power output 90 watts into 2 ohms, 45 watts into 4 ohms.
Okay. So you got 75 watts going into 4 ohms from your Dayton. You're fine.
Yeah, so it should work. That's what I thought.
Yep. And it's very simple. You do one channel into one mini LFE. You could drive 2 mini LFEs. If you decide one isn't shaking your love seat enough, you get a second one, connect it to the other side of that Dayton. You're done.
Carl has a JVC DLA X750 projector. It was one of the first generations of JVC projectors that supports HDR10 and wide color, but does not automatically detect an HDR signal, so it doesn't automatically switch itself into HDR mode. You have to do that manually. Furthermore, the default picture settings for HDR and wide color are way off, so JVC released instructions for altering the settings so that HDR and wide color look correct. So there's the thing. Anyways, now that Apple TV 4K offers its match content setting and can automatically switch between SDR and HDR depending on the content, what would we recommend when connecting an Apple TV 4K to a JVC X750? Quite a few people have suggested using the strip metadata feature offered by the Oppo Ultra HD Blu-ray players when playing Ultra HD Blu-ray discs, but the feature removes HDR but retains the white color. Is there a similar setting available on the Apple TV 4K? My guess is no. I'm going to guess no.
No, they don't have a strip metadata type of feature that would have the HDR metadata removed so that it thinks it's just a standard dynamic range signal but retains the Rec 2020 wide color. There doesn't appear to be a setting that's equivalent to that, because that's kind of the strip metadata thing is kind of a special thing. Some of the Panasonic Ultra HD Blu-ray players can do it too, but I don't even know if we have those in North America. So yeah, this is tricky because let's say you set the Apple TV 4K to the match content setting. So depending on what content is coming in, the Apple TV 4K is switching between SDR and HDR, standard color and Rec 2020 color, depending on SDR or HDR. The X750 is not going to automatically switch, so you're going to have to be aware that what you're watching is HDR and manually switch over to the HDR picture mode. Also, that X750 is slow to switch. Whenever there's a change in the HDMI signal and there's a new handshake, it's slow. It's slow as molasses. You have the blank image for like 30 seconds until something comes back up. So it's a bit of a pain. So that's why a lot of people with those X750s, or there was also the 550 or the 950 in that series, have sort of suggested, like, that's one of the cases where they're like, yeah, maybe you actually do want to let your AV receiver or an outboard video processor, or you plug everything into the Oppo so that it's only sending one type of signal all the time.
Right.
And you're not having to switch between picture modes and HDMI handshakes. There's certainly an argument to be made for that. You could actually just let the Apple TV do what it originally did.
Which was, set out one thing.
It was just send out one thing all the time. That wouldn't be the worst choice here. Because it's still going to, I mean, even when it's sending out a 4K HDR signal, that the content didn't originate as 4K HDR. It's still just putting the SDR content inside of an HDR like container. So it's not as though it's like way too bright or something like that. It's just like you have this big HDR container. It's only filling up a little bit of it.
That seems like the best bet for me. Is just
I think that's what I do.
Just have the 4K. Just have the Apple TV put out
the
same thing all the time.
Yeah.
No
so
matter what that is.
Imagine that update never happened for you, and treat it like the Apple TV 4K treated you out of the box. That's actually what I do here.
Lastly, he asks, what are the best Atmos-ready headphones available? The best Atmos-ready headphones available are any headphone that is very good. Because there's nothing special about Atmos-ready headphones. What they give you when you buy an Atmos headphones is they give you the code that allows you to get the Atmos app thingy for your device, whatever that device is. It's usually a computer, right? It has to be a computer or an Xbox.
It's usually a Windows 10
like
computer or an Xbox One at the moment. Yeah.
So they asked me for that when I was doing that the surround sound stuff, the Atmos demo stuff. They were just, you will put your code in so you can get the headphone stuff. I'm like, no, I'm not using headphones. Shut up. So there's nothing special about those headphones. They're just headphones. You've just paid the $15 that the code costs as part of that. They rolled that into the headphone cost, and they give you the code inside the box. So I would say Oppo makes some really good Atmos ready headphones. You still have to get the code though.
So does Sennheiser. So does Audio Technica. So does Hi-Fi Man.
Audis. Yeah, the Audis ones.
Audis. Shure. Many brands. Sony MDR 7506s. Inexpensive and really good. The Atmos headphone thing, all of that processing is happening inside your computer or inside your Xbox One or future devices that will have Atmos headphone processing. All of it's happening in there. It's really nothing to do with the headphones. It's a promotion. It's a smart promotion because it sounds like these are special headphones. You can only get Atmos this way.
There's no additional drivers in them. Nope. They all have one driver per ear. It's not like they have I was like, do you see these speakers up into the band? Because
it's some tricksy marketing going on.
Yeah, that's all that is. So Jason wrote us a while ago to get our thoughts on his basement home theater plans. One of our big concerns of whether he'd have enough space for a proper landing at the bottom of the stairs based on how things looked in the diagram he sent us. But he wants to assure us that the diagram wasn't properly to scale. So there is, in fact, room for a 3-foot square landing. Excuse me. So he should be able to construct the door and wall as he had planned. So yay.
That's good news. But I'm glad we brought it up nonetheless, because sometimes it's overlooked, and then you're like, oh, wait, I got down to the bottom of these stairs, and there's a door 1 foot in front of me. That's no good.
The main reason he is eager to construct his basement theater is because his upstairs family room has very high ceilings, a wall of windows opposite the TV, and it's open to the rest of the house. So a dedicated theater room will mean he can finally enjoy some light control and pressurized bass. The family room will still be used for casual TV viewing and some occasional music, though. Jason really enjoys DIY projects, so he's planning to build all of his basement theater speakers himself. A sort of practice run. He got a hall pass from his wife to build some speakers for the family room. He used an open source design for a pair of small tower and center speakers. Pre-cut cabinets are available, but he made his entirely from scratch, which is
and they look nice.
Pictures and they look nice. They look very nice. He's happy with their sound quality, but he's disappointed that dialogue intelligibility didn't seem to improve very much over their home theater in a box setup these speakers replaced. He's still using his home theater in a box receiver, and it's a very old Yamaha that only does Pro Logic. He wants to upgrade the receiver anyway, but he wants to spend as little as possible, and he's hoping the new receiver will improve the dialogue situation. Accessories for less has an Integra DTR 30.4 for $210. He'll never go beyond 5.1 in his family room. So is that a good choice? And will it improve the sound quality of the dialogue? There are lots of really good choices that are 5.1. Any of the entry levels from Denon or Marantz probably doesn't have one as cheap as Denon does.
No.
Yamaha, even this Integra might be all right too. I don't really know. But to go to your question of sound quality,
yeah,
you're asking us to tell you whether or not the speakers you made yourself will sound better if you add another receiver. And the answer is we have no clue, because we don't know if the problem is with your speakers or the receiver.
I don't think it's either. I think it's with his room.
Well, that very well could be the case.
Yeah.
We don't know, though. It could be that you make these changes and you get a new receiver and suddenly you're hearing things you never heard before. I don't know. It could be the room. It could be the speaker design too. I mean, I'm not saying you built the speakers. You're doing a DIY project, but I'm assuming that you bought a kit. You bought the drivers and the crossover and stuff.
Was
so there could be faults anywhere along that path that I cannot anticipate. So we can help you with the receiver purchase. We can help you fix the room. But if the speakers are messed up for one reason or another, none of this is going to make any difference.
I mean, just going on the sort of overall what normally happens, usually when people are saying they're having trouble understanding the dialogue, it's room acoustics.
Yeah.
That's the usual suspect. And given what he described of this room, it would not shock me at all that the room acoustics are really, yeah. So you could have very good speakers. I mean, the real crux of what I want to get to is I don't think changing your receiver is going to make a significant difference in the dialogue intelligibility.
I don't either.
Rather unlikely.
I know it's like, oh, it's a crappy home theater in a box receiver. You know what? There's nothing wrong with the receiver. Was never the weak link of the home theater, the box.
Yeah, and it was a Yamaha. I mean, they were fine. The receivers in there were fine.
The problems has always been the speakers. They're great starter. I mean, I don't want to talk them too much, because they are a great entry level. They're a great, we used to recommend them all the time on this podcast, Onkyo in particular, because they would put a full-fledged receiver in there without any special connections or any of that garbage. And you could start off with this 5.1 receiver and these absolutely reasonable, considering how much they actually probably cost to make, speakers. And then people would say, okay, well, I want more bass. We're like, okay, well, let's get you a better subwoofer. Oh, well, now, I can't really, it doesn't sound as good as it sounds in the movie theater. Okay, well, let's upgrade your speakers. Oh, I want more speakers. Let's upgrade your receiver.
Right.
It was modular.
Yeah.
We could do that. That's fine. But nowhere did somebody come to me and say, I can't understand what people are saying. I thought, well, okay, it's probably the receiver.
Yeah, that's like the last thing. Now the thing was, he wants to get a new receiver anyway, because the old one doesn't have the features that he wants. So that's fine.
That's fine.
So you get the new, not too expensive receiver. You plug it in. I wouldn't expect a huge difference in the dialogue, but you're going to get the receiver anyway. So would I recommend this Integra DTR 30.4? He was saying he wasn't too familiar with the Integra band. That's actually just another arm of Onkyo. It's like their home installer brand. They sell it mostly through custom installers. So that's just another brand of Onkyo. Now that DTR 30.4 is going back a ways. That's when Onkyo still did have Odyssey, which they don't have anymore. And it doesn't have any of the new HDMI features. So you were saying you're not going to ever upgrade the number of speakers in this room, but you might upgrade the television eventually. That to me seems like a possibility. So since you can get
a video game system, or I mean, there's just so many options. A Blu-ray player,
I'm like, since you can get a Denon S720W for. Now, he said that Integra was at $210. The S720 from Denon is at $220. $10 more, but that gets 5% bump. That gets you all the way up to the most modern HDMI that we have right now. It can support Dolby Vision. It can support all the HDR, 4K resolutions, all that stuff. So if you do upgrade your television, the Denon S720 is ready for that for 10 whole whopping dollars more, whereas that Integra that you link to doesn't have that capability. Now, I do like Yamaha in the lower price ranges as well. I actually quite like their RXV 383, but Accessories for Less is out of stock right now. That doesn't mean it will never come back, but it is a discontinued model, so they might not get more stock. They still have the 483, which actually gives you a couple more HDMI inputs over the 383, and that one's at $270. So those would be the two I'd look at. I'd look at either the Yamaha or the Denon. I'd probably get the Denon, the S720. It's a really nice receiver, and it's really modern, and it's $10 more.
Okay. Clarence, Claire's first wants to thank us for making an enjoyable show by giving great information without being stuffy and pretentious. I am very rarely stuffy. I am quite often pretentious. So I guess I'm bringing the not stuff. Well, you're not stuffy. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm persnickety.
I don't know what
It's true.
At 10 p.m., my AC resets to whatever the things are, so I just had to go fix it because I was like, "What's going on here again?" Oh, that's right, it's past 10 p.m. All right, he's heading down the rabbit hole of creating a media room. Has already purchased a Marantz SR6011 for accessories for less, and 2 SVS PB12 NSD subs from SVS last week. Now he's looking for speakers, mains, and a center. His room is 2,800 cubic feet. Which doesn't make a difference. But anyways, he recently took advantage of a deal at Best Buy to snag 2 pairs of KEF Q100 speakers for $250 a pair. They sound good. But then you started hearing great things about the ELAC Unify UB5 speakers. A pair of UB5s would be $500, which is doable. Double what he paid for a pair of Q100s. He's willing to pull up the extra dough, though, if they are considerably better speakers, but not if they're only incrementally better. How much better are they?
Not a whole lot.
This is what I'm going to say. What's that?
Not a whole lot.
Yeah, this is what I'm going to say. First of all, if I legitimately thought they were better,
head and shoulders,
considerably better,
right?
Yeah, not head and shoulders. Let's say a reasonable amount better. I would still tell you to stick with the KEFs. And the reason is they're cheaper, you've got them, and you like how they sound. Why are you listening to any of this other garbage? Do what I always say. You buy something new, you stay away from reviews of anything else, especially what you bought. You don't listen to any of it for 6 months. You live with it for 6 months, and then you can start looking around for something else. Okay? You will have enough time with those speakers or that display or whatever to really enjoy it before you start second guessing yourself. But those Q100s are really nice speakers.
Mm-hmm.
The ELACs are also very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't think they're that much different. I definitely don't think they're worth double. But Austin here has got a note here that says that the UB5s are actually $350 a pair right now on the ELAC site.
Yeah, they're on sale.
They're on sale currently. So at $350, is it worth it to you? I would say stick with what you got, man. You like them. Why are we even discussing this?
These are not anything close to a night and day difference.
No.
Over at the Wirecutter, they did a big bookshelf speaker shootout. They actually chose something I want to mention, which is if you've been in the UK, you're going to be like, yeah, duh. We've known about these speakers for ages, and they're really, really good and really, really high value, which is a brand called Q Acoustics. But they've only recently started selling in North America, United States and Canada. So I haven't heard them in person yet, but they've been the go-to value brand in the UK for ages. And the Wirecutter picked them as their top value choice out of all the bookshelf speakers. However, they always give a even less expensive but not quite as good choice. They went for the Pioneers, the Andrew Jones, and then they give one that's a little bit more expensive and sounds a little bit better, but you'll have to weigh whether that's worth it. And they chose the KEF Q series. Now, lower down, they talk about all the other speakers they tested, and the ELAC Unify series was right in there, and they're like, yeah, these would be an upgrade over these, but we're not quite sure that the fit and finish and the extra price is worth it. We think the Q series from KEF is a little bit higher value, but they're pretty darn equal. There you go. That's exactly the way I would feel too. You don't need to replace your Q series. You got really nice speakers. The Unify aren't going to be, I mean, they might sound a little bit different. Maybe it'll be a bit more to your liking or not, but this is not like some big difference at all.
So he's thinking of using 3 of the 4 Q100 speakers for left, right, and center channels with 1 speaker left over. Would you be sacrificing much using one of them as a center? He's read that a concentric placement of the tweeter in the comb makes an appropriate use for center. This is we talk about this all the time in the podcast. I guess we haven't talked about it recently, so maybe I can't say that anymore. But we used to talk about this quite regularly about timbre matching your front 3 speakers. And what does that mean? That means you want to have your front 3 speakers sound as close to identical as possible. How much more close to identical can you get than having 3 of the exact same speaker up front? 0 close. That's how much close you get. Zero close. So yes, this is a great, and not because of the concentric driver or any of that nonsense. It's because they're the exact same speaker.
I'm
Yes, but
thinking
now
maybe he's thinking he'll lay one of them on its side, which normally you'd end up with a tweeter beside the woofer, but now the tweeter's in the middle of the woofer no matter
inside
what.
anyways,
So
yeah.
you totally can lay it on its side if that's a space constraint thing, and it'll still sound perfectly fine. So yeah, no reason to not use 3 out of the 4 as your left, center, right. That's totally fine.
So will either the Q100s or the UB5s placed with the subs be adequate, or should he be looking at towers? And for that matter, what, if any, is the advantage of a tower speaker over a bookshelf speaker when paired with the sub?
Can play louder.
Yes. We cannot answer this question because we do not know how far away from your speakers you are sitting. You have not told us that. At least I have not read that part if it was included in any of your emails.
If it was in the email, I overlooked it because I didn't get it in there.
This is the only question. This is the only factor that should be used when discussing whether or not you want a bookshelf or a tower speaker. Tower speaker will play louder, which means if you're sitting farther away, it can get to reference volume at your ears. What's the advantage to having a tower speaker? It gets louder. Not that it plays lower, that it gets louder. The bookshelf speakers, if you're sitting nice and close to them, nice way to save some money. You still have to buy stands, but a nice way to save some money.
Yeah, you can get a little bit into the whole, that lower mid-range upper bass area because the speaker, even at a 80 hertz crossover, is still playing down to 80 hertz and then even lower. So if you have a really large space, sometimes the output in that area from a small bookshelf, you might hear a little bit of dip in the frequency range. That's a kind of an aside. It's almost all to do with how far away you're sitting. I would say if you're up to 12 feet away, then the Q100s are going to be totally fine. If you are farther than 12 feet away, it might start to get questionable. I'd say between 12 to 15 feet is where you're probably fine unless you really want to hit full reference volume. If you're past 15 feet, you probably want to get towers for the higher output.
Yeah. Mike's in Canada. Mike is finishing his basement. Will have a home theater area with the TV mounted on a 14-foot wall with a 20-foot wall on one side and a 45-foot wall on the other side, running the entire length of the basement. The side with the 20-foot wall opens up to a large portion of the rest of the basement. He knows it's not ideal, but there's no other option.
Sounds kind of L-shaped.
It sounds exactly L-shaped, but
well,
go on.
Maybe the other side wraps around and it's actually U-shaped. So
it could be U-shaped too, yeah. The plan is a 5.1.4 system with SVS Ultra bookshelf main and center, Fluence XLBP surrounds, SVS SB4000 subwoofer, HTD, HDR80 in ceiling speakers, Marantz SR6011. Will the Fluence surrounds, SVS mains, and HTD in ceiling speakers all play nice together, or are there three better pairing options that are close in price? He's in Canada, so he needs Canadian-friendly vendors.
Do you already own the Fluences or something? I'm struggling to understand.
That's what I think too. That Fluence is it's like one of these things, not like the other. One of these things is kind of not the same, right?
Now, maybe he just really thinks he wants bipole surrounds, and these were a lot less expensive. I mean, SVS has the Ultra surrounds that can be bipole or dipole or dual monopole. They're
probably a lot more
expensive.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, if the bipole thing is what you want, that's no longer the recommendation of anybody. You want all direct firing speakers all the way around their home theaters now, and that's because of Atmos and DTSX.
And you're doing Atmos, so that's what you want.
That's what you want. So you actually don't want those speakers. Now, if you need inexpensive speakers, there's
prime
other
satellites?
ones that we can suggest. I mean, why aren't you sticking with SVS?
Yeah, I mean, get some prime satellites for your surrounds. That'll work.
Yeah. The HTDs, I don't know anything about those, but the Fluences were the one that really stood out to me. The rest of it looks okay.
Yeah, the HTDs would be fine. I'm not a big fan of that company. They do ship to Canada, so I imagine that's why they ended up here. You can get the Outdoor Speaker Depot speakers that we often recommend through Amazon Canada.
Yeah.
So I do have to say they come across as a terrible value because it isn't just purely the exchange rate, although you do have to factor in their shipping too, because when you buy them from Amazon Canada, it's free shipping. But going from ones that are $90 a pair in the US to $209 a pair in Canadian dollars. It's a tough pill to swallow, but they're actually still less expensive than the HTD ones after you factor in the exchange rate. And I'm a bigger fan of the Outdoor Speaker Depot ones. So Amazon Canada right now, they have the ICE 650s. Those are available for like just a hair over $200 for the pair, which ends up being less than those HTDs. So I'd maybe point you that way. Although if you get the HTDs, I'm not going to like throw a fit about it or anything. They'll be fine. It's the
No, the Fluences were the only ones that really kind of stood out to me as being the problem.
I get a pair of SVS Primes of some sort as your surrounds. That's what I'd do.
Yeah. So he knows that the SB 4000 probably won't pressurize the room. Not just probably, but well, but will it still give him some good solid bass?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it should. I mean, where are you putting it in this room? Yeah, that's the one question. The closer it is to your seat, the more emphatically I will say yes.
Yeah, more.
But if
it's oomph
of any kind, yes. I mean, if it's going to be way in the back of this room, over in some back corner someplace, because that's where whatever it makes the most. You're still going to hear it. It's still going to make noise.
And I mean, this is an SB 4000, so that's replacing the 13 Ultra series. Yeah. There's no slouch of a sub. You're not going to pressurize this space. You're not going to have like 110 decibel at 20 hertz. It's not going to happen. But you're going to hear some bass. It's not like it's going to be like farting out little noises, like some home theater in a box sub. It's way more potent than that. So I think it'll be okay.
All right, we're going to answer this next question, and that's going to be the last one. This is an easy one anyways. Joe. Given a choice between two Power Sound Audio XV30F subs on Craigslist for $1,800 and a single new SVS PB16 Ultra for $2,500, which would we pick? I don't even want to read the rest of this question because it's such an obvious choice. It's such an obvious choice. Now, for those of you who aren't running out to go get the XV30F Power Sound Audio subs and see what they are two 15-inch drivers in one big box that you stand up on its side. So it's almost like SVS, their answer to SVS's cylinder subs, but able to put out just a ginormous amount of bass.
And it's taking up a whole lot more floor space while they do
it. It is. It says on their website, they are the size of a small refrigerator. Now, I don't think this is
small.
That's what they said. I'm not talking. I don't think they're talking about the under counter, like the little mini fridge. They're talking about like imagine your refrigerator.
Right.
Now imagine your refrigerator a little bit smaller with two 15-inch drivers in it. Now, Joe, if your idea is to try to justify your purchase because of you want to make sure you're getting it with these things are going to destroy just about any room you put them in. And two is always better than one, and because that's what we always say, and it is absolutely true. Two is almost always better than one. So this is a very easy choice. You should get the Power Sound Audios. This will destroy your house. And perhaps your ears.
This is not necessary for his room size. Now he's got a pretty large room. It's
I haven't even gotten that.
Between 4,000 and 4,100 cubic feet. So this is a large room, but it's not an enormous room. He did install a door because we bugged him like crazy to install a door. So he's installed a door. So that's a huge factor because I'm like before he had these 4 JBL subs, and he's like, this isn't giving me what I want. But he didn't have a door. So that was a huge factor. And those JBL subs that he had just straight up did not play down to 20 hertz anyway, so he wasn't getting the full extension regardless. But now he's got a door, so he's got an enclosed like 4,100 cubic foot space. You do not need an XV30 from Power Sound Audio in that size of room. That is meant for 6,000 cubic feet and up.
You should totally buy these subs. I am sorry. I would be on this deal.
Well, plus the price. I mean, that's a good
price
for these
insane. Are you kidding me?
That's a really
$1,800 for dual subs that he could put in an auditorium if he ever decides to buy one someday? This is the kind of bass that's going to potentially cause structural damage to your house, or that door better be up to code.
Yeah,
To blow the door off your new home theater. This is, I would, if you can justify, if you can get it down the stairs, I would do it.
Yeah, I mean, if these can physically fit, then yeah, no question, you get the two over the one. I mean, what are you giving up?
So the two PSA subs, he says, have more cone area, true, but don't seem to go quite as low. Okay, while the SVS has DSP and EQ built in, don't really care. Then again, the PSAs will give him dual placement, and they will also look very large. That is true, but I think he's saying that as a plus.
It seems like he's saying it as a plus. Yeah.
Yes, they will be. If you're saying they will be impressive, they will be terrifying, sir. They will be terrifying to small children and all of your friends. So he would place a single SVS in the storage space under a screen close to the center of the front wall, while the PSAs could go in the front corner of the room, or one in the storage space and the other midway on the side wall. The room is a little over 4,000 cubic feet, and since we bugged him so much, whenever he has a door coming from car audio, so we're overkill when it comes to bass. It's not his vocabulary. He doesn't have any outboard EQ, so he's interested in subwoofers that offer their own EQ and or tuning. No, you don't need EQ. You're gonna first of all, I don't know what the storage space garbage is. You don't shove the sub in. You're gonna break your storage space.
His front wall. It's like a 5-foot high cubby in his front wall.
Is it in the middle of the front wall? I don't remember this guy.
Yeah, it's sort of in the middle of the front wall up there.
It's in the middle. Well, then you gotta do. You will not need the EQ as much if you do the opposite placement. Okay, so it's either mirrored placement, either middle of the front wall, middle of the back walls. Opposing corners, midway in the side walls. Do that. If you're gonna buy dual subs and you're not gonna do that, you're kind of like defeating the whole purpose of the thing.
But you could add a mini DSP for $100. And
for the price you're paying for these things, dude. Yeah. I mean, in the mini DSP, well, does that have because he can use a room EQ wizard on that, right? So he needs the microphone and everything else with it too. So yeah, get the two subs, try to place them as optimally as you can. And if you still are unhappy with how they sound, get a mini DSP for $100 and now, a microphone for maybe 100 on top of that.
Like, I just wanted to say, let's say he just came and said, here's the room I have. Okay, I got this door. I got 4,100 cubic feet.
Yes.
What two subs would you recommend, especially if I want ones that have EQ and stuff built into them, right? If I came at it from that approach, my top choice would probably be a pair of SVS Plus series, because for this size of room, that's the perfect amount of output, and they have all the filter features and the parametric EQ and everything built into that Plus series. So that would give him everything he wants, but duals of those would cost more than this pair of Power Sound audios, right? Even if we went for the PC12 Plus cylinders, he's still looking at, I'm so frustrated I can't look up the US prices, but I think they're $1,200 or $1,300 each, and then it's $100 off of that when you get
that sounds
two of them. So it's around somewhere in the $2,400-$2,500 range for those two. So that would be like a number one choice. And then if I was going for like a value choice for brand new subs that would kill this room and have some tuning features, I'd probably point you to the Rhythmic, the FP15 or the FV15 HPs. Because those give you like SVS Ultra, 13 Ultra series level output at a lower price. So you could get a couple of those for around $2,500 as well. So in all of these instances, you're ending up around $2,500. I would not get a single PB16 Ultra. That makes no sense.
No.
But given that you can get this pair of Power Sounds, I mean, they're too big, but if you can physically fit them, you can get them for that, and you could get a mini DSP and a UMic 1 for the measurements, all for $2,000. There you go. It's overkill, but the price works.
He wants overkill. This man clearly wants overkill. All right. Well, Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year and all that. We're going to stop there. Rob is going to tell you if your question has come in, what your name is, and we will get to you next week.
Yes. On the list, we have Jason, Brandon. Brandon's is fairly lots of words, but it's not actually that many questions. Just the initial D. That's all I had from the email. Chris T. Greg, Biv over on Facebook, and David. Is that the last one on the list? That is. So there you go. Those are the emails that we have. Yep. We got a couple that came in there on either Monday or today, but yep, we'll be on the next episode.
I will be reporting more about Dolby Atmos in the future. So once again, thank you, Accessories for Less, for providing the Focal birds. I will also be listening to them very closely, seeing how well they really they have integrated seamlessly into this
Hmm.
system. I'm going to be playing with the placement a little bit. I've kind of
Sure.
got them slightly angled,
Mm-hmm.
so they're not facing straight down, which I should probably I've been looking at them while this podcast has been going on. And I kind of want to angle them. I want
Mm.
to go straight down and try that. I'll have to run Odyssey again, but whatever.
But so far, you can say they're not terrible. So
I got
we
to
know
go
that much.
much further than that. Once again, we're going to thank our listeners of the week. We're going to thank Brian and James. I'm checking James twice, actually. They went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, left us a PayPal donation. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, James.
Yeah, Brian, James, thank you so much for those donations.
I also want to thank our 42 patrons who are supporting us on patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Clarence and Stephen being two of them. Thank you to all 42 of our patrons.
Yeah, Clarence, Steven, thanks for signing up at Patreon. Thanks so much to the other 40 patrons as well. We really appreciate that.
And we're going to thank James, Clarence, Stephen, Jason, and Chris for talking us up to mostly, I guess it was Accessories for Less and SVS.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for making sure they know that you bought because of us.
Yeah, that's Clarence, Steven, Jason, and Chris for talking us up. And James sent Tom and I a little Christmas gift there. So thanks, James. We appreciate that.
Thank you, James. We would like to answer your questions, but we can't answer them if you don't ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We hope to hear from you soon. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.